So we're beginning a new chapter, which is entitled The War Against Yourself, which should lead you to question, what are they talking about? A war? I didn't know I had a war going on against myself. Well, we'll dive into that shortly. We'll be reading section 1 in this session entitled The Irreconcilable Beliefs. In A Course in Miracles, frequently they refer to two voices that offer you two entirely different perspectives on life. These are voices within you. From this, to these two voices, there naturally arises two different concepts of yourself, two selves in conflict. What if you later learn that there are three selves? Would that be more confusing still? Or would you prefer the third self remain hidden so it's easier for you? There are two parts to what you think yourself to be, and you've made each of them seem real in your thoughts. These two selves in perpetual conflict with each other. Each of them is an error in your self-appraisal, for neither is the super self whom God created, which can be known but cannot be perceived. Welcome to Miracles on High Plains. I'm your host, Jonica, and our reader tonight is David W. David?
1. The irreconcilable beliefs. The memory of God comes to the quiet mind.
Oh, I'm sorry, David, we're going to do the introduction.
Okay.
I know I didn't say that. Go back to the beginning of this chapter, the intro. It begins with, do you not see?
Do you not see the opposite of frailty and weakness is sinlessness? Innocence is strength, and nothing else is strong. The sinless cannot fear, for sin of any kind is weakness. The show of strength attack would use to cover frailty conceals it not, or how can the unreal be hidden? No one is strong who has an enemy, and no one can attack unless he thinks he has. Belief in enemies is therefore the belief in weakness, and what is weak is not the will of God. Being opposed to it, it is God's enemy, and God is feared as an imposing will.
And we're going to do the next paragraph.
How strange indeed becomes this war against yourself. You will believe that everything you use for sin can hurt you and become your enemy, and you will fight against it and try to weaken it because of this, and you will think that you succeeded and attack again. It is as certain you will fear what you attack as it is sure that you will love what you perceive as sinless. He walks in peace who travels sinlessly along the way love shows him. For love walks with him there, protecting him from fear. And he will only see the sinless who cannot attack.
Okay, so this is profound. We want to make sure we're following along here. How strange indeed becomes this war against yourself. This is the ego's environment, the ego's outlook. Just for this moment, we're not talking about your true self. We're talking about illusions of yourself. And in that environment, there is an illusion of yourself as weak, and another part of you that doesn't approve of that weakness, that is opposed to it, that would be critical and would attack it, to be mean and angry towards the weak part of yourself. This is a war against yourself. And it is certain you will fear what you attack, as it is sure that you will love what you perceive as sinless. So let's say this in another way. You've probably seen the image where there's an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other, and the person is caught between, not knowing which one to listen to because they're both trying to get your attention. Well, in that image, we're going to reinterpret that image now to mean something else. On one side is the devil, what would appear to be the devil. It's the part of you that you don't care for, you don't like, you're very critical of. And the other part is your angel self. It's the part of you that wants to believe that you're a good person, that you have many good qualities. And so that would be a part that we would like to identify with. What is hidden from your mind, what is psychologically unrecognized, as both of these are images of yourself that you have created in this world, that you have pieced together experiences in your life here and there. One confirms this part that you don't care for. Other experiences confirm this part that you do care for. So these are not gifts from heaven. These are interpretations that are based on your experiences here on earth. They are false self-concepts. It's a failure in your self-appraisal. And if you look at this from the ego's point of view, you could spend your entire life going back and forth between these two concepts, always wondering which of them is your true self, never thinking that there is a holy self from heaven that is unlike either one of the concepts that you've been preoccupied with. This is the trap. This is what keeps us ignorant of our true self and busy for years and years in the midst of this confusion. And if any of you don't recall what it's like to be caught between these two selves, I recall conversations I had where an idea came up to go on an adventure, and one part of me said, "Oh, it's an adventure. This will be a lot of fun." And the other person will say, "Yeah, but it's going to take, several weeks of your time and all this money." And the other part would say, "Yes, but what are you living for? You got to go in life for the opportunities. Money will come, time will come, but this may not be around again." And the other part says, "Yeah, but there's a risk you might get hurt here. Are you sure you're willing to take?" And back and forth, be caught between these two voices with two different opinions, and I didn't know which one was me. Well, turns out neither one is my spiritual self. Both of them are false self concepts. And So I was speaking about my experience, but I am asserting that all of us, everyone in this world, has these differing concepts of themselves. But we are not altogether clear minded about these things. And the purpose of this session is that you can see it clearly, that it no longer be a secret to you. And therefore, when the phenomena arises again, where there's these two different voices going back and forth, you won't be confused by it. You'll just say, oh, I know what that is. That's the two false selves in conflict. Oh, by the way, one of the characteristics you know that you can tell when you're in the middle of that is these two false selves are fighting for their point of view. There is opposition, there is antagonism between them. Unlike spirit, which remains quiet and does not choose to participate in the fight. Let's go on.
Walk you in glory, with your head held high, and fear no evil. The innocent are safe, because they share their innocence. Nothing they see is harmful, for their awareness of the truth releases everything from the illusion of harmfulness. And what seemed harmful now stands shining in their innocence, released from sin and fear, and happily return to love. They share the strength of love because they looked on innocence. And every error disappeared because they saw it not. Who looks for glory finds it where it is. Where could it be but in the innocent?
Mm-hmm. So this is a call to spirit for you to seek for glory, for you to use your spiritual vision to look for glory. You won't find it in those two selves that are fighting with each other. It's in another layer or level of your most precious holy mind. It's in a room of your mind that is illuminated by the Holy Spirit, where forgiveness reigns and innocence can be recognized and seen for what it is. This is a shift. This is a miraculous shift in perception away from the being stuck in your own internal battle and elevated instead into a room where glory shines. It has a completely different vibe. Can I use that word? It has a completely different vibe. The feelings that come to you are markedly different. This is what it feels like to be aware of your soul and the interconnectedness of your soul with other souls and with spirit. It's a tranquil, peaceful place. David?
Let not the little interferers pull you to littleness. There can be no attraction of guilt in innocence. Think what a happy world you walk with truth beside you. Do not give up this world of freedom for a little sigh of seeming sin, nor for a tiny stirring of guilt's attraction. Would you, for all these meaningless distractions, lay heaven aside? Your destiny and purpose are far beyond them, in the clean place where littleness does not exist. Your purpose is at variance with littleness of any kind, and so it is at variance with sin.
We're going to go on.
Let us not let littleness lead God's Son into temptation. His glory is beyond it, measureless and timeless as eternity. Do not let time intrude upon your sight of him. Leave him not frightened and alone in his temptation, but help him rise above it and perceive the light of which he is a part. Your innocence will light the way to his, and so is yours protected and kept in your awareness. For who can know his glory and perceive the little and the weak about him? Who can walk trembling in a fearful world and realize that heaven's glory shines on him?
Mm-hmm. So as soon as one learns to find the door to their soul and enter in, even if for a moment, into the room where there is tranquil peace and comfort of the Holy Spirit, as soon as you get there, there will be an opportunity to leave, to go back to the familiar monkey mind where all the chaos is, and there's all these things in the world that will keep you busy and various forms of distraction. So you can prove this to yourself by trying to sit quietly for 5 minutes and think of nothing. And you may have moments where you become quiet minded. And how long does that last before another part starts to say, oh, that's right, I got to pick up some bread before I go on my way back. Or I need to remember to call my brother and wish him a happy birthday, or all that starts up again. And so we need to train our minds to be able to sit quietly and peacefully. It is not taught by the nature of the modern world to be quiet and peaceful. Action and reaction and busyness and chaos are taught by the modern world. So what a miracle worker needs to do is let not the little interferences pull you back into littleness. This is more than just, this is a declaration of setting a boundary so that you learn to stay in that holy place we call the right-mindedness is the term we use in A Course in Miracles, but it's also, you can think of it as your most holy mind. The workbook lessons are all about teaching you to find and get comfortable with and identify with your most holy mind, your right-mindedness. And so learning to do that is one thing. Another is to set the boundaries so that you let not the little things pull you back into littleness. Learn, first of all, by learning to recognize the difference between these states of mind. And then the key thing is to learn to fall in love with the higher state, with the miraculous state of mind. When you love being there, it will be easy for you to find moments in your life where you return to that place because you love it. Not because you were told to do it or it seems like a good idea, but because you really like being at peace. That is the key. And that took me more years than I'd like to admit, but we can learn to undo the grip that this world has and fall in love with the effects of being in the higher mind, the higher state that we call miracle mindedness. This is where all the promises come through. Now, having said all that, we have one more paragraph and then we'll begin the first section.
Nothing around you but is part of you. Look on it lovingly and see the light of heaven in it. So will you come to understand all that is given you. In kind forgiveness will the world sparkle and shine, and everything you once thought sinful now will be reinterpreted as part of heaven. How beautiful it is to walk, clean and redeemed and happy, through a world in bitter need of the redemption that your innocence bestows upon it. What can you value more than this? For here is your salvation and your freedom, and it must be complete if you would recognize it.
The course is really wonderful at offering us a vision of what is promised, the precious promises that are given in the course are then presented to us in the, I like to call it the form of a vision. It's right here. You will come to understand all that is given you, and kind forgiveness will the world sparkle and shine. Well, that may not be what your experience is right today or even next week, but that is the vision that, as it appears from the miracle mind, and that is your destiny to find that miracle mind for yourself. We would say that is the means for which the entire plan that we are a part of has been given. And I think I raised my hand. I don't know how I did that, but Noelle, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I thought I raised your hand, but I did.
You might have. I don't know how that happened.
First sentence, nothing around you but is part of you. That addresses what we've been talking about recently, about how we view the world and how much of a projection it is, how real it is, how we reconcile it with our higher self. So this is, for me, an answer. See the light of heaven in it. And next paragraph, then the world will sparkle and shine and be reinterpreted. So it's like my perception of the world doesn't have to be sinful. I think you said the time and space have been given us to learn.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So time, space, and the world have been given us to learn. And this, to me, is an answer to that I can enjoy the world, be very grateful for it, for all the different things in it, and yet not feel tied to it.
Yes. Very good. Very, very crisp the way you said that, Noelle. And just if I might add to that, it all appears that way because we looked within and saw the light within us, and that shines outward. And as a result, the world now sparkles and shines. The world, physical world, the atoms, the trees, and the land, the grass doesn't change. But what's coming out from my mind on projecting onto the world is now a reflection of the inner light. And that brings about all the change. And especially you can appreciate how that would bring about changed relationships because now you're shining on your brothers with forgiveness and love. Heather?
Yeah, I just realized that we can also, I mean, our innocence can be like hopeful. We can be hopeful for the world and see, beautiful opportunities, see things through a lens of wonder, really, and what things that could be, good things that could be. And then that can take away that bitterness. And it's bringing that innocent part of us, almost like that childlike part of us that wants to see the good and can see the good.
Indeed. Indeed. That is what the vision is about. And it is childlike because it is innocent and it is trusting and believing and hopeful and not cynical, not held back. And yet it's also above the level of this world as we usually think about it. Okay, so it's a long session in terms of reading here tonight because of that intro and then this section. David?
The memory of God comes to the quiet mind. It cannot come where there is conflict, for a mind at war against itself remembers not eternal gentleness. The means of war are not the means of peace, and what the warlike would remember is not love. War is impossible unless belief in victory is cherished. Conflict within you must imply that you believe the ego has the power to be victorious. Why else would you identify with it? Surely you realize the ego is at war with God. Certain it is, it has no enemy. Yet just as certain is its fixed belief it has an enemy that it must overcome and will succeed.
Mm-hmm. So the primary purpose of the Holy Spirit is to teach us, our minds, how to distinguish between truth and reality versus illusions and chaos, to make a distinction and not become confused about that. Well, here's a distinction. The memory of mind, the memory of God comes to your quiet mind. The other part of your mind, where there is conflict, a war against itself, a war that the ego believes it can win. That part of your mind is very different than your most holy mind, which is at peace and is quiet. And no one taught me these things in life. I didn't learn it until I came to the Course in Miracles. I didn't learn it so clearly that both were occurring within my own mind. So it can be, as we know, confusing to try to navigate between these different rooms of one's mind and these different messages, and the conflicts are there. It's easy to get caught up and think that you have been called into the battle to win a victory against a part of your mind that you're arguing with. All that is but a distraction, a delaying maneuver by the ego to keep you from the memory of God, which exists in your quiet mind. Okay, so and two more things that are stated in the Course very clearly. The most important thing you can do is decide what the goal is that you are going to adopt for yourself. We suggest you adopt the Holy Spirit's goal, her plan for atonement. And once you get clear in your own mind about the goal, then the way to get there will be provided you, the path. So in practical terms, if you're on the East Coast and you decide your goal is to drive to San Francisco, first you get clear on the goal, the destination, then you figure out the route to get there. In miracle terms, first you agree to the Holy Spirit's goal, the plan for all creation, God's plan for creation, and then the method to get there will be provided you. So the memory of God comes to your most quiet mind. You can think of that as the goal, as that you would remember God in a way that we all knew God before we came to time and space, before we were born. Heather?
I used to think that I was in charge of having to make my mind quiet. That was my full responsibility until I read the last 5 lessons, that be you in charge. And it says, if you need a word, I'll give it to you. If you need a thought, I'll give it to you. If you need a tranquil, open mind, that also will I give. And so I for the first time practicing that, I started to realize that I can't do this on my own. It's a gift from the Holy Spirit to have a tranquil, open mind. So asking for the help to quiet my mind rather than thinking it's all up to me has been huge. And I'm having those times now where my mind is quiet because she's helping me come into that place and I'm not doing it on my own. I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful, Heather. And I think for a lot of people, we have gotten confused about what is our part in this. But to affirm, the quiet mind exists within you because the Holy Spirit dwells within you. And our part is to gladly and willingly look for the entrance to the quiet part of our mind and to daily accept the invitation to enter into the quiet part of our mind. Once you start practicing it regularly, it becomes easier to find. Like anything, after a while, you can find it with your eyes closed. Okay, Noelle?
I'd like to explore a little more the angel devil concept. I recall in one of the lessons, he asks us to enumerate what you think is wrong with you and also what you think is right with you.
Yes.
I don't remember which lesson it is, but he said that something like they're all equally false.
Yes.
Rising beyond those two,
Mm-hmm.
to the higher self, is it true that we don't have to enumerate any characteristics one way or another?
It is. It is. As a matter of fact, we would call that another delaying maneuver. Let's enumerate all these things because the whole idea, Noelle, is that these are concepts born in this world. So here's an example. Let's say I had a very good relationship with my mother and she always reinforced positive things about me. But when I got around my father, he always reinforced negative things about me. Okay. So now I got 2 parents, one of which is supportive of my good self, and the other which is highly critical. And what's the word? Not embody. I take that information in
Internalize it.
What is it?
Internalize.
I internalize those 2 different voices and think of them both as part of myself. and they become opposing parts of myself. So our goal is not to analyze that, Noel. The psychologist of the 20th century recommended you spend a decade in analysis of those things with all the characteristics. We are the Holy Spirit, with one quick statement, sweeps all that away and says it's all illusory. Why would you want to spend any more time enumerating the nature of illusions when what waits you is the memory of God? That's where we want to find ourselves. And so this program is intended to help us save time by not analyzing the ego. Susie?
So, as Heather said when she read those statements just a little while ago, we just give it all up, yield it all. What would you have me do? What would you show me? And
Yes.
just wait and listen.
Yes. As a matter of fact, it's interesting your question there, Noel, because what we read just earlier was, let not the little interferences pull you into littleness. Well, enumerating all the attributes of the false self is a way in which we get pulled into our littleness. And then we'll know all about our little narrative. And that is considered to be years and years can be saved by just letting it go. Susie?
I was just going to say a really great lesson for this is I am under no laws but God's. And when I am under my ego's laws or Susie's laws or the little interference laws, I'm exactly the opposite. But if I can remember, which I don't all the time, what the laws of God are, and that just means I'm loving, peaceful, joyous, whatever. I think it answers a lot of this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm under no laws but God. I'm not suggesting that's where I reside all of the time, but I do know that to be the truth.
Indeed. Indeed. Thank you. All right, I need to pick up my pace a little bit here. David?
Do you not realize a war against yourself would be a war on God? Is victory conceivable? And if it were, is this a victory that you would want? The death of God, if it were possible, would be your death. Is this a victory? The ego always marches to defeat because it thinks that triumph over you is possible. And God thinks otherwise. This is no war. Only the mad belief, the will of God, can be attacked and overthrown. You may identify with this belief, but never will it be more than madness. And fear will reign in madness and will seem to have replaced love there. This is the conflict's purpose. And to those who think that it is possible, the means seem real.
Mm-hmm. So we're deep into the ego's. We're exposing the ego's intentions here. There's no longer a secret. The ego is in conflict with love. It wishes to replace love with fear. It believes itself to be at war with God, even though in truth it's incapable of war against God. The ego would like to believe in the death of God. And unless that sounds so far-fetched, back in not so long ago, in the late 19th century, Friedrich Nietzsche declared that God is dead. Philosophically, he reasoned through, he had a brilliant intellect for sure. He reasoned through all the things that philosophers had said up to that time, and he decided that Christianity, the whole message of love made no sense, and that God is dead. And then and then World War II, one and two happened, and people lost hope and came to wonder, is it true that God is dead? It made the cover of Time magazine in 1966. The idea is it's a loss of hope, and this is the exact agenda of the ego, is to bring about a replacement of love with fear. And so when you see any of that, just realize those are manifestations of that thought system. David?
Be certain that it is impossible God and the ego or yourself and it will ever meet. You seem to meet and make your strange alliances on grounds that have no meaning. For your beliefs converge upon the body, the ego's chosen home, which you believe is yours. You meet at a mistake, an error in your self-appraisal. The ego joins with an illusion of yourself you share with it, and yet illusions cannot join. They are the same, and they are nothing. Their joining lies in nothingness. Two are as meaningless as one or as 1,000. The ego joins with nothing, being nothing. The victory it seeks is meaningless as is itself.
Mm-hmm. This point of view, the ego is nothing, its intentions are meaningless, is the view of the Holy Spirit. Said another way, there's not a single thought that the ego has ever had that enters into heaven. It's all trash. It's all rubbish. And so the Holy Spirit sweeps it all away. And Noel would have us do the same thing, not spend our time rooting through the trash to try to find something valuable there. Save years of time by moving forward and instead embracing the teachings of the Holy Spirit that have lasting value, that have eternal meaning with them, and that are in accord with God's plan for creation. This is how we save time. This is how we move forward, make progress more quickly. Go ahead, Noel.
The last paragraph underlines how powerless the ego is when we remember that and can sweep it away.
Yes, the ego is powerless, but its agenda is for us to transfer our power onto its illusionary system and remain occupied with that. In truth, the ego wants your attention. It wants your time and your faith to pay attention to the narratives that it produces, and they are always, in one form or another, involve conflict. Never does love emerge. What we would call unconditional love emerge from the ego's narrative. David?
Brother, the war against yourself is almost over. The journey's end is at the place of peace. Would you not now accept the peace offered you here? This enemy you fought as an intruder on your peace is here transformed before your sight into the giver of your peace. Your enemy was God himself, to whom all conflict, triumph, and attack of any kind are all unknown. He loves you perfectly, completely, and eternally. The Son of God at war with his Creator is a condition as ridiculous as nature roaring at the wind in anger, proclaiming it is part of itself no more. Could nature possibly establish this and make it true? Nor is it up to you to say what shall be part of you and what is kept apart.
We'll go on.
The war against yourself was undertaken to teach the Son of God that he is not himself and not his Father's Son. For this, the memory of his Father must be forgotten. It is forgotten in the body's life, and if you think you are a body, you will believe you have forgotten it. Yet truth can never be forgotten by itself, and you have not forgotten what you are. Only a strange illusion of yourself, a wish to triumph over what you are, remembers not.
So much of what is being talked about here is not something that most people are in touch, prior to the Course in Miracles, are in touch with. These inner psychological conflicts that mirror a larger conflict that the Course says is an ancient conflict. It's not simply true of you, it's been the experience of people on earth for thousands of years. And we read about it in a couple paragraphs earlier, is the ego's attempt to replace fear with love. And that agenda is like a campaign in your own part, that part of your mind, your little mind. It's like there's a campaign to replace love with fear. And it has as its outcome, this replacement of love with fear, it has as its outcome what is referred to in the Course as the fear of God. For if you believe that the world is a fearful place and that we are under constant threat and assault, then you are deeply afraid and you will believe that that's what reality itself is, and therefore the Creator must be like that, and transfer your fears, project them onto God. And that's exactly the goal the ego has, is that you would do anything to keep from returning to the loving arms of God. It's the biggest lie possible, is that the lie that you should be afraid of God and that you would be justified in being afraid of God. And this becomes a metaphor for your own deepest fears, which are for everyone, hidden deep in our subconscious mind, not something we typically recognize, but with the aid of the Holy Spirit and these teachings that we're discussing, those hidden dark secrets can be brought out into the light and seen next to the truth. And then how ridiculous they are. You can decide whether or not you want to give your power and faith to those beliefs or dismiss them as impossible, as meaningless, as unworthy of your attention. And that's what we mean by choosing again. And so if it sounds like a profound existential crisis, I think it is. I think there's nothing more vital to a sense of your true self than to face these questions. David?
The war against yourself is but the battle of two illusions.
I might have missed something here.
The war
No.
against
The next paragraph, what you remember.
What you remember is a part of you. For you must be as God created you. Truth does not fight against illusions, nor do illusions fight against the truth. Illusions battle only with themselves. Being fragmented, they fragment. But truth is indivisible and far beyond their little reach. You will remember what you know when you have learned you cannot be in conflict. One illusion about yourself can battle with another, yet the war of two illusions is a state where nothing happens. There's no victor and there is no victory. And truth stands radiant, apart from conflict, untouched and quiet in the peace of God.
We're going.
Conflict must be between two forces. It cannot exist between one power and nothingness. There is nothing you could attack that is not part of you. And by attacking it, you make two illusions of yourself in conflict with each other. And this occurs whenever you look on anything that God created with anything but love. Conflict is fearful, for it is the birth of fear. Yet what is born of nothing cannot win reality through battle. Why would you fill your world with conflicts with yourself? Let all this madness be undone for you, and turn in peace to the remembrance of God still shining in your quiet mind.
Mm-hmm. All right, so this is helpful if you find yourself in one of those inner conflicts. Realize that this is the nature of illusions, that illusions battle amongst themselves. And that is their purpose, is to support conflict. And you can easily be confused into identifying with one of those opposing parties. That would be the error in self-appraisal, the error in self-identification of thinking you're one of those battling parties. Here's where the Holy Spirit then offers a solution. Up in the quiet part of your mind is where your true self resides. It does not choose to participate in the battleground, in the field between I'm right, no, you're wrong, I'm better, you're better. It does not care for that mode of engagement. And so it remains quiet, shining in your quiet mind. And the great transition into the new perception, into the new vision, is to learn how to find that quiet mind of yours, which is already, as Heather pointed out, it's not that she has to work to make her noisy mind into a quiet mind. It's that she has to learn to navigate willingly and gladly to the quiet part of our mind. And as I said, when you learn to love it, it will become a pleasure to go there into that part of your mind. You won't want a day to go by that you don't visit that part of your mind, for that's where you will feel truly alive, is when you're in that part of your mind that is illuminated by the Holy Spirit. The alternative, I think, is easy to undo. I should say it's easy to dismiss. The alternative is to remain stuck in a permanent conflict between two illusions of yourself where there are no winners. It's just about the fight. And this is one of the ways in which early on I learned to recognize the ego. The ego is always looking for a good conflict. And it can be a verbal conflict, it can be an emotional conflict, it can be a form of competition, of being better than, as long as it's a pretend as if there could be a winner, but in reality, there cannot be a winner in the battle amongst yourselves. It's not, that's not the way the rules are written there. Okay, so I think we've made the point that there are these two selves. A question really comes then, do you want to adopt your most holy self as your true identity? And do you want that with your heart and soul? And once you or get around to saying absolutely yes, that's where I'll put my faith, then everything else is about the steps you need to take to get there. And the Holy Spirit has guaranteed us to show us the steps to get there. David?
See how the conflict of illusions disappears when it is brought to truth? For it seems real only as long as it is seen as war between conflicting truths. The conqueror to be the truer, the more real, and the vanquisher of the illusion that was less real, made an illusion by defeat. Thus, conflict is the choice between illusions, one to be crowned as real, the other vanquished and despised. Here will the Father never be remembered. Yet no illusion can invade his home and drive him out of what he loves forever. And what he loves must be forever quiet and at peace, because it is his home.
And just reinforce it's a metaphor called home. Your true home is not a building made out of cement and wood, but your true home is where you are safe forever. It is always with you. Some people might choose to symbolize that as heaven. Others might choose to symbolize that as being in the arms of God. Others might view that as sitting quietly in this illuminated space. It really doesn't matter in the way you imagine it to be. What matters is that you desire to be there and experience the gifts that it has to offer. And earlier, Noel asked if spoke about enumerating the attributes of the ego. Much better would it be if we spent our time in the quiet room and maybe a word or two would emerge that describes the way we feel about that experience. These kinds of experiences are necessary to break open the inner light, to break open our awareness of the inner light. We need more than our past experiences under the guidance of ego. We need a new set of experiences that are under the guidance of the Holy Spirit. And these you will find by practicing and inviting peace into your life. David?
See how the conflict of illusions disappears when it is brought to truth?
We got that. And I off? I don't know. Help me here.
No, I probably. You who are beloved of him are no illusion, being as true and holy as himself. The stillness of your certainty of him and of yourself is home to both of you, who dwell as one and not apart. Open the door of his most holy home and let forgiveness sweep away all trace of the belief in sin that keeps God homeless and his Son with him. You are not a stranger in the house of God. Welcome your brother to the home where God has set him in serenity and peace and dwells with him. Illusions have no place where love abides, protecting you from everything that is not true. You dwell in peace as limitless as its creator, and everything is given those who would remember him. Over his home, the Holy Spirit watches, sure that its peace can never be disturbed.
There is a line that Noel pointed out early on in the introduction. I believe this is the one that said, nothing around you but is part of you. Translated, everything around you is a part of your higher self, your higher you. Well, your holy self, not talking about your body or the part of your mind that is sometimes confused and uncertain, but talking about the part that God created. I am as God created me. That part of you is where love abides. That part of you is home, where God has set you and everyone else in the house of God, metaphorically speaking here. So let's say it this way, the home that you feel with God is the same home that everyone in creation feels with God. We don't have, like on earth, we have our separate homes. Simon has his home. Lauren has her home. We all have our separate homes. And no one would say that that's my home if I don't live there. But in spirit, all things are shared. And so the house of God is a shared experience. We're all at home in the same home. And why bring this up? Because it's the concept that you're not isolated and alone and separate, but that you are interconnected with the creation in a holy relationship with all the members of the house of God. And so part of me says, oh, this sounds like spiritual babble. The truth is, we're talking about a fourth dimensional reality. We're not talking about the physical plane of reality or even the plane of mind and thought. We're talking about a higher plane that comes from the Creator himself. It is a zone of perfect peace that we choose to call the house of God. And your nature is from that zone. That is your essence. That is your eternal self. You are part of it, and it is part of you. And what we're suggesting is that's where you will find your true self. That is your home. That's where the memory of God exists. That's who you truly are. And so when we talk about remembering God or the memory of God, we are talking about just that, remembering your connection to source. David?
How can the resting place of God turn on itself and seek to overcome the one who dwells there? And think what happens when the house of God perceives itself divided. The altar disappears, the light grows dim, the temple of the Holy One becomes a house of sin, and nothing is remembered except illusions. Illusions can conflict because their forms are different, and they do battle only to establish which form is true. Illusion meets illusion, truth itself. The meeting of illusions leads to war. Peace, looking on itself, extends itself. War is the condition in which fear is born and grows and seeks to dominate. Peace is the state where love abides and seeks to share itself. Conflict and peace are opposites. Where one abides, the other cannot be. Where either goes, the other disappears. So is the memory of God obscured in minds that have become illusions' battleground. Yet far beyond this senseless war, it shines, ready to be remembered when you side with peace.
Mm-hmm. So the memory of God is ready for you to rejoin with, to recall, to recognize. This is to cognize once again what you knew before you came to this world, to remember the truth of your being and of your innocence. It's ready for you now. And on the flip side of that invitation are the invitation of illusions to obscure your memory, to keep you busy and occupied and distracted with all manner of silly conflicts that have no outcome worthy of your time. And so what the Course teaches is that we must train our minds not to be confused about these things and to learn a new set of boundaries so that we learn that the room of our mind that is constantly in conflict, that no truth can emerge from there. No amount of analysis of the ego's conflicts will ever result in you finding truth in it. And therefore, use your spiritual reason that has been given to you as a gift to see the illusions for what they are and decide not to invest any effort in them anymore, and move all the power of your mind into the task of uniting with Holy Spirit's guidance. Susie? I can't hear you.
Sorry. I wanted to say, until the Course, I think the ego is very powerful. It turns out it's powerless if we deny its power. But it's very powerful because for me, I lived in my false identity for years. And look, there's a whole chapter, the war against yourself. So I just want to say that for me, like I can read all this and intellectually understand it, but for me, this is where the workbook lessons are just crucial. I just have to repeat them over and over and over again to understand how I can retrain my mind, how I can turn away from my ego. Because my ego or the ego is so strong and illusions are real as, seem real as in their effect as the truth. So if I didn't do my workbook lessons and didn't have something to turn to when temptation rises, I'd still be choosing the ego. The workbook lessons, however, over and over and over again has been the thing that has helped me really, really, really start to heal. So, I'm always plugging those workbook lessons. And I have to do them every day. And I think that's why, in the beginning, when it says repeat them 20 minutes every hour, every 4 hours, every 3 hours, there's a reason, because the ego just comes back and wants to invade me, over and over and over again. So I need those tools to help myself turn away and deny the ego. So that's all. Just plug in the workbook lessons. And I agree with Heather. Everything that's been healed in me, everything I get is from is being willing to ask the Holy Spirit to help me.
Mhm. Yeah. Susie, while you were sharing, I know many times in the past you've talked about jumping into the ring when there's a person that says something or does something, and it's like an invitation to let's duke this out, let's argue about this. You used to use the metaphor as like an invitation for you to jump into a boxing ring. Well, I don't know if you realized at the time that the person that was inviting you is like your lower self, and the person that was attempted to jump into the ring is what you would seem to think of as your better self. And that both of them are illusion. The whole idea of being in a conflict with another like itself is inherently illusions battling illusions. And so it takes it to a whole new level of who is it that's being tempted here to fight. I used to think that that was my better self, that was my higher self. And now I realize that the higher self is not tempted at all to enter into a conflict. Simon?
Oh, hi. No, we've read several times about the course being a course in mind training. I've been here several times along my notes. So we need to train our minds to not pay attention to the rumblings of the ego. In some way or another, I've written that same thing several times. And am I correct to assume that the ego doesn't really disappear? You just keep it at bay perpetually with your mind training?
I think the best way to think about it is, Simon, there's like a fire burning, and if we keep throwing wood on it, well, that fire is going to continue to burn.
Okay.
The fuel that we throw onto it is our attention, our faith, our belief that it's real. And this is why, Noel, we don't want to evaluate it, because it's just more fuel for the ego.
Okay.
But what we do is we dismiss it, we withdraw it, we stop giving it any power, and after a while, that fuel, as you know, you stop adding wood, it burns out.
Okay.
And by that, what I mean is literally the impulses in your mind start to diminish so that there's very little impulse towards ego illusions. And when there are, you can immediately tell, oh, that's part of me that I is not at peace. I choose to remain at peace.
Okay.
But to your real question, it says that the last lesson that Jesus ever learned was to hear only one voice and not two, which is to say that you're going to still have that little fire burning right up until the final lesson. It'll burn down to be a little fire, but the final thing to go is that light goes out, and then you're done with learning. That's when you're complete.
Okay.
Yeah. So obviously we all have a ways to go. You know,
Yeah,
but
me
it's a
for
vision.
sure.
It's a vision of the bigger plan the Holy Spirit has, and it's not limited to our time here in this body on this world. The plan doesn't end here. This is not an ending. This is a beginning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, my brother. All right. That's as far as we're going to read tonight. I would remind you that each of us make two illusions of ourselves in conflict with each other, seen as a war between they are seen as a war between conflicting truths, one to be crowned as real and the other vanquished and despised. This power to be victorious, to be the winner and identify with it, surely you realize it is the ego who is at war with God. It's the ego that would keep you away from the quiet part of your most holy mind, and that part will wait patiently for you. The light will always be burning there, waiting patiently for you whenever, at any moment you ever choose to say, Lord, help me. Thank you all, my brothers and sisters. We will get together again and continue with the war against yourself. I promise you that it has insights and truths and revelations that you won't find, that I haven't found in any other book. I've tried to find truths in other books of psychology, particularly, and in philosophy. The Course in Miracles just really is a book from heaven and says it better than anything else I've ever found. So look forward to us getting together and sharing that again real soon. Namaste.
Namaste. Thanks, David. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Peace and love all.
Thank you,
Good night,
Jonathan. Thank
everyone.
you, David.
Namaste. Thank you, David. Thanks, Jonica. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, brother.